I think that today in the world, a tremendous amount of our politics actually revolves around these struggles over recognition. So identity politics, what have been the big struggles in American life over the last two generations? The civil rights movement, the feminist movement, now the struggle for gay rights and gay marriage. These are all recognition struggles. Especially the feminist movement and the gay rights movement were led by middle-class people whose economic uh, um, subordination was really not all that great. And in fact, most of these people economically were coming from the upper middle classes or from elites of various sorts. But the issue for them was, it may have been money, but it was money as a signifier of dignity. That's the issue in gay marriage right now. It's not material benefits being passed on to you, your offspring and so forth. It is really about the fact that people want their dignity recognized as the equals of others. And I think in the nationalist struggles going on in Ukraine, Crimea, all of these places, again, there is a material component to this, but a lot of those struggles are struggles over recognition and dignity, and that continues, I think, to shape a lot of our international politics today. And that, is the aspect of the whole Hegelian account of history that then brings up this question of the last man, because Nietzsche, in a sense, reading Hegel, said, well, yes, if you get to the end of history, what happens? Because history is all about struggle. It's all about the desire to be recognized as greater. And if you have a society based on the equality of recognition, where everybody gets that equal recognition, but nobody has anything to aspire to, that you've got a just and equal society, it's materially prosperous, it's stable, there are no big fights. This kind of was like Clinton's America in the 1990s, where we could worry about Monica Lewinsky, as the major issue in human history. That's problematic, because in fact, what calls forth the greatest virtues and in a sense, the greatest flourishing of human character is precisely the fact that there's injustice in the world, precisely the fact that there are great wars to be fought or great struggles to be undertaken. And if you live in a world at the end of history, you're going to have the last man. You're going to have a man without a chest, meaning somebody with no self-assertiveness, who does not struggle, does not demand recognition, and the like. And I would say, if you look around the world these days, a lot of, it continues to be an issue, because I think people want something more than peace and prosperity. This is why they want to climb Mount Everest, or this is why, my former students wanted to go, work to fight poverty in the developing world. They still want worlds to conquer. They still want injustice to correct. And so there's, in a certain sense, a hidden inherent contradiction in the end of history world, that if we actually all arrive at peaceful liberal democracy with widespread shared mutual prosperity, our lives are somehow going to be diminished as a result of having successfully arrived there. So, that I think continues to be an issue that, as I said at the end of the book version of The End of History, is in fact one of the unresolved issues in a modern liberal democracy. All right, so let me now turn to fast forward to 25 years later, and how do I regard the world now? So, so don't tell me that the world is really different in 2014 than it was in 1989. I know that. So, we got some real problems right now, because I think just this year, you've had both Russia and China. So first of all, Russia never developed as in the way that, we hoped. In fact, I remember Mike Mandelbaum, right after the fall of the Berlin Wall, saying that, Russians actually seem to be much more European than we had given them credit for. And that, seemed to be plausible back then. But unfortunately now, if you look at the popular reaction in Russia to the annexation of Crimea, they're actually quite different in a lot of their preferences and, understanding of authority and things of that sort. China, for its part, did not reform. Tiananmen was, as we all know, put down in a great deal of blood. They went on to be, unlike Russia, enormously successful in developing a modern high-tech economy, and they're on the move. So they're now slicing up Asia in little salami slices, hoping to stay under the radar. But they also, I think, like the Russians, have certain, and actually in the Chinese case, I really do think it's a struggle for recognition. They don't care about these stupid coral reefs and so forth in the South China and East China Seas. I mean, I think what they want is they want to be recognized as the #1 power in that part of the world, which was their historic role in dynastic China. And after having gone through 100 years of humiliation and whatnot, they're back. And they're saying, we're back, and Japan, the United States are not recognizing that fact. And I think that's really what, the agenda that's unfolding. So we've got a big geopolitical problem. I agree with Walter Mead, our colleague at the American Interest, who wrote in Foreign Affairs recently that geopolitics is back. But I would say further that if you look at the performance of a lot of democracies around the world, there's also a lot that we could wish for. So some of it is just democratic backsliding. Thailand looked like a big success in the 1990s after it democratized and survived the East Asian crisis, but increasingly the society has gotten polarized between yellow shirts and red shirts, and finally the military stepped in and took over. Bangladesh, it holds democratic elections, but it's in the thrall of these two enormous clientelistic, highly corrupt political dynasties. Turkey has been backsliding into authoritarian practices under Prime Minister Erdogan. Nicaragua, Venezuela. I mean, there are a number of countries in Latin America that are clearly either highly corrupt or authoritarian, or pay lip service to democracy but do not implement the essence of it.